The Wild Boars of Madness. Chapter 14. Aunt.
That year, nothing grows well in the fields. The topsoil was excavated, leaving the nutrient-poor subsoil with insufficient fertility, and the presence of sand and stones hindered the growth of crops. The commune's pig pens and sheds were washed away, resulting in a 50% reduction in the pig population. With the shortage of feed, the supply of pig manure fertilizer also decreased significantly. The Huahezigu Valley, after this calamity, seemed as if it had been stripped of a layer of skin, leaving a large portion ecologically impoverished and in desperate need of healing. Surprisingly, the commune secretary found comfort in this situation. The natural disaster, destructive as it was, had destroyed 300 acres of terrace fields and washed away 200 fat pigs. While the losses were enormous, it provided an explanation to the county. Initially, the county had hoped to seize the opportunity, present a positive example, and report good news. However, fate had other plans. The hard-earned achievements were all in vain. Attempting to boost morale again faced challenges as the mountain people proved to be cunning. In this messy situation, akin to mud against the wall, even the dead pigs were not afraid of boiling water. The county had no choice but to let things take their course. 6 months of hard work went down the drain. Though the commune members were vocal in their complaints, the sudden and significant natural disaster left them with no one to blame, not even themselves. However, the actions taken in the preceding years had somewhat eroded the people's trust. When speaking up, he responded. While others may have temporarily felt helpless against him, he had become more restrained. His arrogance had dwindled, and he no longer carried himself with the same airs. Young Laoyang had forecasted the flood, led the way to rescue others, and labored tirelessly. The mountain folks, simple in nature, no longer treated him as a child from that day forth. That autumn, the grain distribution was somewhat disheartening. Originally, they had planned to take advantage of the autumn, when the farming season was over and the water was shallow, to collectively dredge the Juming-Scourge riverbed. However, due to an abundance of large rocks and a lack of heavy machinery, progress was slow. Later, they procured some dynamite. However, faced with inadequate food supplies and scattered morale, people's efforts gradually waned. They worked without output, and one day's work couldn't even complete a single explosion. Before they knew it, the snow had sealed off the mountains. That winter was more unbearable than the previous one, especially damp and cold. People from the mountains paired up and went to Huahezigu Valley to find food. Animals were particularly scarce that year, and returning empty-handed became more common. The number of people entering the mountains decreased. In early December, someone discovered giant boar tracks in the snow, larger than all the commune's domestic pigs, estimated to weigh over 200 pounds. Soon after, near the slave shack, someone found boar tracks again, this time both large and small, with little difference in size. It appeared that 3 or 4 wild boars had lingered in this area. Animal paw prints in the snow held clear significance for mountain people. The snow displayed the animals' tracks vividly and preserved their movements for a long time. Experienced hunters waited eagerly, following these distinct marks. Using 100 ancestral techniques, they tracked, pursued, and brought back a large bundle of fur, protein and fat, peeling, preparing for wind by washing, steaming, boiling, stewing, pickling, smoking, and curing. In such days, even if the gods arrived, they wouldn't trade them for anything. 3 or 4 wild boars weighing over 200 pounds each. This was no small endeavor. Spontaneously, the crowd formed 3 hunting teams, each comprising no fewer than 10 individuals. They equipped themselves with hunting knives, blunderbuss, crossbows, ropes, shovels, large animal traps, and provisions, and set off into the mountains. Despite his young age, Laoyang was skilled in hunting, and, having been invited by the others, he bid farewell to his mother and ventured into the mountains with a hunting knife and a lasso. The 3 teams were the cabin team, the team leader team, and Yuzheng team, with Liang joining the team leader as team. The cabin team swiftly occupied the slate shack, a shelter spacious enough for 7 or 8 people to stay in. The dozen or so team members split into groups to search and rest. It was somewhat roomy, considering the circumstances. Laoyang set up a small shack about a mile away from the slate shack. Though small, it could accommodate 2 or 3 people. Fortunately, it was a wind-sheltered mountain nook with elevated terrain and a surprisingly broad view. Behind the shed, the pigsty was spacious, constructed with sturdy walls made of branches and stone slabs. A few branches were temporarily laid on top for a roof. creating enough space underneath for people. For the hunters entering the mountains, it wasn't too uncomfortable. Seeing that this ravine was already crowded with hunters, the mutant team grumbled and mumbled before reluctantly heading to another ravine to try their luck. That night, a thin layer of snow fell, smoothing out the chaotic traces in the ravine. In the middle of the night, with the mountain wind calm and the air freezing, Yang and 2 or 3 companions quietly ventured into the ravine for their first search. Wild boars are creatures that move both during the day and at night. When hungry, they get up to forage, and when full, they return to their lairs to sleep. In the winter, Huahezigu Valley had limited food sources for wild boars. On the meadow, they could root for grass, bark, and insects in the soil. Under the trees and shrubs, there were insect nests and dens of mountain mice. With luck, they might uncover dens where several snakes huddled together for winter hibernation. Along the mountain stream, there were moss and fish to feed on, but the water was cold and the ice was thick, making it less favorable. As long as wild boars got up to forage, they would undoubtedly leave footprints in the fresh snow. Following these tracks, they were sure to find the wild boars' whereabouts. If they found the wild boars' den, that would be a stroke of good luck. Perhaps heaven took pity on the wretched mountain folks, for that very night, their luck turned. Yang walked across the thick ice of the small stream at the bottom of the ravine. By the glow of the rising moon, he noticed a broken ice surface near the dry grass by the creek. Scanning the surroundings, there was no sign of disturbance on the slopes and valleys. Silently, he approached the shattered ice. On the snowy ground by the bank, a vast expanse of chaotic animal footprints stretched out, with the deepest impressions belonging to boar tracks. This area was adjacent to a large sparse grove of cypresses. The shallow water and thin ice near the bank made it a water source for animals in the harsh winter. It was an excellent spot. After dealing with the wild boars, they could set up an ambush here another day. The footprints faintly revealed the presence of 4 or 5 wild boars. Along the way, occasional pig hairs caught on tree trunks could be found, some black and some white. Yang felt a wave of tension, almost hearing his own heartbeat. Following the boars' footprints through the woods, across slopes and hills, they traced a winding path for 7 or 8 miles. They circled around the base of the mountain, and a dark, massive crevice appeared in the snowy mountain. The mountain was split into 2 along this crevice. The slope outside the gorge was about 100 feet wide, gradually narrowing along the mountain's contour until it reached the cliff, where it was only about 10 feet wide. The crevice, spanning more than 10 feet, resembled an enormous, open mountain abyss, impossible to discern its height and depth at a single glance. As the fallen leaves accumulated thicker on the sloping valley, they resembled a mattress. By the time they reached the crevice, the leaves were covered with patches of snow, and the pig tracks finally disappeared at the mouth of the crevice. The Valley of Fallen Leaves,